just let them know.
They did that for me. Is this too close, Liz, or you want me to social distance? Is that way too close? Or you want me to social distance?
Do you want me closer, like here? It's right there. Breathe in. I don't know how I'm going to remember all these words. That's like a sad version. Where's the happy version? That sounds completely different. Yeah. Sounds completely different. It's like, that's like crying around the Christmas tree. There we go. Oh my God. I'm like, are we crying around the Christmas tree? Wow. Is it even on? Oh my goodness. Not that I need it.
Rocking around the Christmas tree at the Christmas party hop. Mistletoe hung where you can see. Every couple tries to stop. I think she forgot how the song goes.
We had one whole rehearsal.
We did. We had a whole rehearsal. Okay, let's do that again. Rocking around the Christmas tree at the Christmas party hop. Mistletoe hung where you can see. Every couple tries to stop. Rocking around the Christmas tree, let the Christmas spirit ring. Later we'll have some pumpkin pie and we'll do some caroling. You will get a sentimental feeling when you hear voices singing, let's be jolly. Deck the halls with boughs of holly. Rocking around the Christmas tree, have a happy holiday. Everyone's dancing merrily in the new old-fashioned way. You will get a sentimental feeling when you hear voices singing, let's be jolly, deck the halls with boughs of holly, rocking around the Christmas tree, have a happy holiday. Everyone's dancing merrily in the new old-fashioned way.
That's probably right. That was great.
Lots of stuff. Gotta use your muscles today. All right. Thank you very Good morning. Our prelude this morning was O Tannenbaum, arranged by Vincent Guaraldi and played by Julianne Knopf. Whether you are participating online or here in person, we say welcome home to Live Oak Unitarian Universalist Church. My name is Doug Martin, and I'm so glad you're here. For our guests, I'd like to invite you to subscribe to the Live Oak weekly newsletter. It's the go-to place to know everything that's happening here. There is a link to it in our homepage. Thanks to all for your continued care in following the current guidelines for the in-person service, so we can provide as safe an environment as possible during what remains of a challenging time. Masking is mandatory inside for everyone over age 2. But with your mask on, you will be invited to once again lift your voice and to sing along. Today marks the 5th different way for us to do worship. As we've adapted to changing pandemic guidelines, and we appreciate your patience and sense of humor as we experiment and adjust. And now, here and at home, let us light our chalices. Does the road wind uphill all the way? Yes, to the very end. Will the day's journey take the whole long day? From morn to night, my friend. Our opening hymn is It's Beginning to Look a Lot Like Christmas by Meredith Wilson, performed by Darya Tomanovich and us. Please rise either in body or spirit and join together in song.
You go, take a look at a 5 and 10, listening once again, with a candy cane and silver aglow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas, toys in every store, but the prettiest sight to see is the holly that will be on your own front door. A pair of hop-along boots and a pistol that shoots is the wish that Bonnie and Ben. Dolls that will talk and will go for a walk is the hope for Janice and Jen. And Mom and Dad can hardly wait to start again. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Everywhere you go, there's a tree at the Grand Hotel, one in the park as well. It's the sturdy kind that doesn't mind the snow. It's beginning to look a lot like Christmas. Soon the bells will start, and the thing that will make them ring is the carol that you sing right within your heart. And it's beginning to look a lot like Christmas.
I'm Reverend Joanna. 630 days ago, we had our last worship service in this sanctuary. Shortly after that, I got this smaller clergy stole for what was then Zoom worship. And you've probably seen at least the top of it, but if you get a little closer to me, even with social distancing, what's on the bottom is a rainbow and a dove. And I got it because of that story that even if you grew up Unitarian Universalist, you have probably heard of Noah and the ark, and how Noah sent out birds to try and find out, had the waters receded, was it safe to go back? And eventually the dove came back with a twig in its mouth, and they knew that their ordeal was over and that they could go home. It's not quite as clear-cut for us, but nonetheless, I thank you, and I thank you at home for keeping the faith that eventually that dove would return with the twig and we would return here. And it is so good to be back in this home. And I'm glad that I get to put that stole aside and put on this one. Today is a precious gift. Let us rejoice and be glad in it. Whoever you are, whomever you love, and wherever you are on life's journey, you are welcome here. And I'd like to take a moment to especially welcome our guests because you should know that rather than gathering because we all have the same beliefs, we are an intentional community that is gathered around our shared promise to support each other's individual spiritual journeys. And we are also intentional about bringing all ages together. In today's world, that often doesn't happen, but we think that it's important to have an adult friend ask a child or a youth, hey, how'd you do on that science test you were worried about? And to have a 30-year-old and a 70-year-old chat about life as they're hanging out after the service or working on a project together. Though we do not require everyone to share the same beliefs, you'll still find that many of us have values in common. We believe in science, reason, the equality of all, and the need for equity. We know that Black lives matter, we value reproductive justice, and we celebrate the LGBTQIA+ community. We work to make love the doctrine of our lives and to put it in action through service in this church and out in the world. So that's a little bit about us. I hope after the service we can get to know a little bit about you. May we celebrate the promises and the possibilities of this day together. Every week when we gather, we share pieces of our lives with each other. We share our sorrows so that we may offer comfort to one another, and we share our joys so that we may celebrate together. And today, Carrie Krause shares the concern. She says, please hold my daughter in your thoughts. My eldest is having complications with her pregnancy, and my second-born lost a friend to suicide this past week. And they will be in our thoughts. And Rin Goss shares, my joy is to be here today. My concern is COVID is still happening. I think she echoes the feelings of many of us. In this religious community, we hold with reverence the knowledge that each week a multitude of different emotions and experiences are brought together into this space. One of us may be celebrating while one is weeping. One may be filled with determination while another is filled with despair. The mosaic of all these experiences is holy, and we honor all with our witnesses. So our big idea today comes from Agatha Christie, who you probably know more, right, as the mystery writer. But she was also a woman of faith. Her faith was Christianity, and she wrote this story called The Water Bus. Mrs. Hargraves didn't like people. She tried to, because she was a woman of high principle and a religious woman, and she knew very well that one ought to love one's fellow creatures, learning as we go. But she didn't find it easy, and sometimes she found it downright impossible. All that she could do was, as you might say, go through the motions. She sent checks for a little more than she could afford to reputable charities. She sat on committees for worthy objects and even attended public meetings for abolishing injustices, which was really more effort than anything else because, of course, it meant close proximity to human bodies, and she hated to be touched. She was willing to be just, kind, fair, and charitable to people, so long as she did not have to see, hear, or touch them. But she knew very well that that was not enough. She was standing on this particular morning by her daily woman, who was sitting sobbing on a chair in the kitchen and mopping her eyes. Never told me nothing, she didn't, not her own mom, just goes off to this awful place, and how she heard about it, I don't know, and this woman did things to her, and it went septic or whatever they call it, and they took her off to the hospital. Won't say who the man is, not even now. Terrible thing. My own daughter, such a pretty little girl she used to be, lovely curls. I used to dress her ever so nice. Everybody said she was such a lovely little thing. Mrs. Hargraves stood there wanting to be kind, but not really knowing how because she couldn't feel the right kind of feeling. Quite suddenly, Mrs. Chubb gave her nose a final trumpet-like blow and sat up. Nothing like a good cry, is there? Mrs. Hargraves had never had a good cry. Her griefs had always been inward and dark. She didn't quite know what to say. When she had stacked everything away, Mrs. Hargraves took a shopping bag and went to shop. "Excuse me, I was here before you." A tall woman infiltrated herself. It was quite untrue, and both of them knew it, but Mrs. Hargraves stood politely back. Unfortunately, she acquired a defender, one of those brawny women who are public-spirited and insist on seeing justice is done. "You didn't ought to let her push you around, love," she admonished. "You was here long before she was. I come in right on her heels, and I know. Go on now." She administered a fierce dig into the ribs. "Push in there and stand up for your rights." "It really doesn't matter," said Mrs. Hargraves. "I'm not in a hurry." Her attitude pleased nobody. Mrs. Hargraves made her purchases and escaped to the street, thinking how really awful people were. Her shopping bag was quite heavy by now, so she thought she would take a bus home. There were 3 or 4 people waiting at the bus stop, and an ill-tempered conductress shouted at the passengers, "Come along now, hurry along, please. We can't wait here all day." She seized Mrs. Hargraves by the arm above the elbow with iron fingers, causing her acute pain. "Inside only, full up now." She tugged violently on the bell, and the bus shot forward. Mrs. Hargraves wanted badly a desert island. Since a desert island was not immediately obtainable and would probably require her to be around all kinds of other people to get the tickets and see the travel agent and all of that, she strolled down to the river. A water bus, she thought hopefully. She was in luck. The steamer or water bus or whatever it was singularly empty. Mrs. Hargraves bought a ticket to Greenwich. It was the slack time of day, so few people were on the water for pleasure. In the bow of the boat, there was only a solitary man, so Mrs. Hargraves went up to the bow. She looked gratefully around her. Blessed, blessed water, so insulating. Now they had passed through the docks. Her feelings of happiness and serenity grew stronger. For the first time, she paid more attention to her fellow traveler in the bow. He was wearing a long cape-like coat of some wool-like material. What beautiful material the cloth of the coat was. It seemed to all be woven in one piece, so finely woven too. She obeyed an almost irresistible impulse to touch it. She could never recapture afterwards the feeling that the touch of the coat brought to her. It was quite indescribable. It was like what happens when you shake a kaleidoscope. She was standing again by Mrs. Chubb, poor Mrs. Chubb. She heard the story again, only this time it was a different story. It was not so much what Mrs. Chubb said, but what she had been feeling, her despair, and yes, her guilt. Because, of course, she was secretly blaming herself had she not paid enough attention to her daughter and the friends that she was bringing home. Other people came into Mrs. Hargrave's mind. Those women enjoying their fight at the butcher's counter, characters, all of them, fun, really, especially the big red-faced woman with her passion for justice. She really liked a good row. That bad-tempered bus conductress, why, her mind probed, came up with a solution. Her young man had stood her up the evening before, and so she hated everybody, hated her monotonous life, wanted to make other people feel her power. One could so easily feel like that if things went wrong. The kaleidoscope shook, changed. She was no longer looking at it, she was inside it, she was a part of it. The boat hooted. She sighed, moved, opened her eyes. They'd come at last to Greenwich. Mrs. Hargraves went back by train from Greenwich. The train at this time of day, the lunch hour, was almost empty. But she wouldn't have cared if it had been full, because for a brief space of time, she was at one with her fellow human beings. She liked people. Almost, she loved them. It wouldn't last, of course. She knew that. She knew that a complete change of character was not within the bounds of reality, but she was deeply, humbly, and comprehendingly grateful for what she had been given. She knew now what the thing that she coveted was like. She knew the warmth of it and the happiness, knew it not from intelligent observation, but from within, from feeling it. And perhaps, knowing now just what it was, she could learn the beginning of the road to it. Already the warmth and the vision was fading, but she would not forget. She would never forget. "Thank you," said Mrs. Hargrave, speaking from the depths of a grateful heart. She said it aloud in the empty railway carriage. The mate of the water bus was staring at the tickets in his hand. "Where's the other one?" he asked. "What you mean?" said the captain, who was preparing to go ashore. "Must be someone on board still. 8 passengers there was. I counted them, and I've only got 7 tickets here." "Nobody on board. Look for yourself. One of them must have got out without you noticing him. Either that or he walked on water." And the captain laughed heartily at his own joke.
Every week, we engage in the spiritual practice of generosity, combining our resources to support the ministries of this church. Part of our mission is to empower dreams, and this Sunday we are sharing the offering with our Ministers' Discretionary Fund at Live Oak. This fund enables Reverend Joanna to respond to members of the congregation who are in need, or to help people who are not our members but need help badly.
Amber called her uncle, said we're up here for the holiday. Jane and I were having solstice, now we need a place to stay. And her Christ-loving uncle watched his wife hang Mary on a tree. He watched his son hang candy canes all made with red dye number 3. He told his niece, it's Christmas Eve, I know our life is not your style. She said, Christmas is like solstice, and we miss you, and it's been a while. So the Christians and the pagans sat together at the table, finding faith and common ground the best that they were able. Just before the meal was served, hands were held and prayers were said, sending hope for peace on earth to all their gods and goddesses. The food was great, the tree plugged in, the meal had gone without a hitch, till Timmy turned to Amber and said, is it true that you're a witch? His mom jumped up and said, the pies are burning, and she hit the kitchen. It was Jane who spoke. She said, it's true, your cousin's not a Christian. We love the trees, we love the snow, friends we have, the world we share. You find magic from your God, we find magic everywhere. So the Christians and the pagans sat together at the table, finding faith and common ground the best that they were able. Where does magic come from? I think magic's in the learning, 'cause now when Christians sit with pagans, only pumpkin pies are burning. When Amber tried to do the dishes, her aunt said, really no, don't bother. Amber's uncle saw how Amber looked like Tim and like her father. He thought about his brother, how they hadn't spoken in a year. He thought he'd call him up and say, it's Christmas and your daughter's here. He thought of fathers, sons, and brothers, saw his own son tug his sleeve, saying, can I be a pagan? Dad said, we'll discuss it when they leave. So the Christians and the pagans sat together at the table, finding faith and common ground the best that they were able, lighting trees in darkness, learning new ways from the old, and making sense of history and drawing warmth out of the cold.
How do we celebrate holidays during pandemic? The churches from 1918, hold on. What's that? Okay. Put it on mute. There we go. How's that? Okay. Well, everyone, cross your right leg over your left leg, and no, don't actually do that. How do we celebrate the holidays during pandemic? The churches from 1918, they didn't leave us any instructions about how to do this. There's nothing that they have written about their experience, and there's no experts now that we can turn to. How about if I just do this? Always in beta. There we go. So the only experts in how to do the holidays during pandemic, I guess, are us. In point of fact, we have done it once before, but it is so different now, right? And we have to keep, we have to keep reminding each other that things are actually better. No, they're not the way that we envisioned. We don't have everyone here. There are some of our youngest people who cannot get the vaccine. We are having to wear the masks, but it is better than last year. But we're in this strange gap, yet again, of uncertainty, where we haven't fully processed what we have already been through, and we don't know what is to come. Omicron, is it going to be something terrible? Is it going to be the salvation that chokes out the more dangerous versions? We don't know. And we can't put off the holidays. We can't just say, oh, we'll do all of this when this is all over. Years and years ago, way before the pandemic, when my kids were little, we started this family tradition. Usually it was the day after Thanksgiving. And we would put on this particular song, We Need a Little Christmas, by the New Christy Minstrels, played off of a Firestone Christmas album that is older than me. Some people of a certain age are nodding and going, I remember those. And we would dance around the living room. The kids, we were changing partners every few seconds. The older kids fairly like flinging each other across the room. The youngest ones doing that thing, right, that little ones do, where they raise their arms and kind of hop, which is the universal toddler message of pick me up. Occasionally, my spouse and I would even get to dance with each other. We'd steal a kiss, and especially as the kids got older, they'd retch and groan and developmentally appropriate. And then at the end of the song, we would all applaud and we would say, welcome Yuletide, the Christmas season is officially open. And at that point, we could begin decorating the house and watching the Christmas shows and all of those holiday things that you do. And the song was, it's a high energy song, which now you're hearing on the radio like 5 times a day. And it was perfect for that, right? Haul out the holly, put up the Christmas tree, slice up the fruitcake. I know that we have some fruitcake haters in the congregation, and I'm going to be self-differentiated about it. It was a perfect song for all of that. This year, though, there's a few of the lines from the song that are hitting kind of heavy. I've grown a little sadder, grown a little older. I need a little angel sitting on my shoulder, need a little Christmas now. Wow. Gee, son, just at me next time. Just call me out by name. This song is resonating. And not only that part, but also, the part about we need a little Christmas. I don't just want a little Christmas this year. I need it. I need it for my feelings that have been so bruised. I need it for the grief that I have been carrying that isn't fully processed. How could it be fully processed? And I need it to strengthen me up for whatever it is that is to come. I think that it's natural. I think that, that there's something wired in us. Even way before pandemic or any of that, for thousands of years, humans would note the changing of the seasons, and they created rituals and traditions around all of that. And so I think that there is something in us that when the days, when it starts getting darker at night, when it starts getting colder, that will happen, that we, and especially after this past year, right, where we saw how literally deadly winter can be. And so I think it's natural that there's just something in us, whether we are pagan or Christian or agnostic or, secular, whatever it is that we are, that we begin to crave lights and warmth and connection and joy, celebration, and certain themes. There are certain timeless themes that we see in all of our stories of this time, stories of love, stories of generosity, and especially the theme of transformation. I've talked about that before, about how if you really look at most of the beloved classics that we consider to be holiday classics, those all deal with the issue of transformation, right? The Grinch's heart grows 3 sizes. Scrooge vows that he will keep Christmas in his heart. He will honor it all year long. And yes, by this rubric, Die Hard is a Christmas movie. Even John McClane goes through transformation, realizing that his wife is the best thing to ever happen to a bum like him. I think that it's natural that as people would look at the changing seasons, they would look at the transformation that was happening around them, they would be lifting up their hope that the earth would transform again, that they would say, if the earth can go through transformation, then perhaps I can have an experience of transformation as well. I am not like Mrs. Hargraves. I actually like people, which is probably really good in this profession. Otherwise, I really chose the wrong career. But the last couple of years, guys, folks, it's been hard, right? It has been hard to always like people. And boy, I would love to be able to touch some sort of a magic cloak and just feel the warmth and love and generosity flow over me. And sometimes we get that this time of year, right? That's why people talk about the Christmas spirit. Something in seeing the lights or in hearing a heartwarming story, and we get that moment of where we get a little bit of transformation, and we go, okay, maybe I can love more. Maybe I can be kinder. Now, for those of us who are not getting that magic moment, or not touching some magic cloak, or seeing, hearing some magic song, here's some good news. And it comes to us from the behavioral analyst, the therapist who work with people. What is proven time and time again through research is that actually most of our stories get it backwards. Our stories are often about people having a change of heart and then moving into action. But most therapists will tell you that a lot of the time it's the opposite. The belief, the feelings follow the action. Nike was actually saying something quite profound when they adopted that slogan of just do it. Because you can do something over and over and over again, and then one day the feeling slowly starts to appear. And so, sorry, Agatha, but if I was talking to Mrs. Hargraves, I would point out, well, you've been doing these good things for so long. Sure, it's about time the feelings that go with that finally kicked in. How do we celebrate the holidays during pandemic? It is the holidays, of course. We all know this. This is why we go and we say happy holidays when we're out and about. So many holidays, Yule and Christmas and Boxing Day and Kwanzaa and Hanukkah. The last night is tonight. Quick plug, the rabbi and I will be up here tonight for our interfaith PJ story time, once again telling the story of the Latka that couldn't stop screaming. I invite you to that. But I was talking to Rabbi Rebecca Reese this week, and she told me something about Hanukkah, a little detail that may answer this vexing question about how to celebrate the holidays during this strange time of uncertainty. I imagine most of you know the story of Hanukkah. The Maccabees had been victorious against armies way larger than they were. They went back to the temple to find that it had been vandalized, desecrated. They cleaned it all up, and they looked for the sacred oil to light their lamp. There was only enough oil for one night, but a miracle happened, right? And it remained lit for 8 nights. But hold on, wait. Let's go back to that first night. We know the story. We know how the story ends. In this legend, they didn't know how the story ends, and yet they lit the lamp anyway. Even with all the uncertainty they had, they lit the lamp. As Rabbi Reese said, "Blessed are those who act." How do we celebrate the holidays during pandemic? A beloved colleague and friend of mine who has passed away, Reverend Mark Edmiston Lang, I once asked him, I was about to preach, and there was a theologian that had one of those long German names, and I said, "How do you pronounce this?" And he said, "Loudly and with great enthusiasm." So how do we celebrate the holidays during pandemic? If you feel like it, if you can muster it up, loudly and with great enthusiasm, blessed are those who act. I invite you now to enter with me into a time of meditation and reflection. Give yourself the gift of being just right here, right now. Make yourself a little more comfortable. Uncross your legs and close your eyes if you're comfortable doing that. This is a time of so much uncertainty. When we have been living for months and months and months with uncertainty, having our hopes go up and down, it's so easy right now to become cynical and disillusioned and jaded, to be mad at life itself, as well as everyone else who has been a part of this uncertainty. To say, "You cannot fool me again, life. I'm not going to get happy again. I'm not going to have hope again." But that doesn't serve us well. People will often talk about, preparing for the worst. I've never seen anyone for whom that actually helped, to whom that actually made things better. May we relax ourselves from the feeling that if we are to hope again, that we are fools. May we become childlike again to allow the joy and the fun of this season to sink into our heart. May we take into ourselves what we most need from this time, whether it is being around other people and celebrating and being loud and boisterous, or being at home in the quiet, listening to gentle music, watching the flame of one solitary candle. Blessed are those who act. Amen, and blessed be. And to take your energy up, our closing hymn is "Rocking Around the Christmas Tree," performed by Elizabeth Mays, Daria Tomanovic, and C.T. Goss. Please rise in body or in spirit. Feel free to dance.
Any of y'all heard this song before? It was really hard. It's a new one. It's my first time to ever hear it this week, so pray for me. It's not true, Ren. Christmas tree at the Christmas party hop. Mistletoe hung where you can see, every couple tries to stop. Rocking around the Christmas tree, have a happy spirit ring. Later we'll have some pumpkin pie and we'll do some caroling. You will get a sentimental feeling when you hear voices singing, let's be jolly, deck the halls with boughs of holly, rocking around the Christmas tree, have a happy holiday. Everyone's dancing merrily in the new old-fashioned way. Sentimental feeling when you hear voices singing, let's be jolly, deck the halls with boughs of holly, rocking around the Christmas tree, have a happy holiday. Everyone's dancing merrily in the new old-fashioned way.
Good morning. I am Carrie Krause, the Director of Lifespan Faith Development here at Live Oak, and it is so wonderful to be back inside our sanctuary. I want to welcome you to join us this morning for Faith Development. We'll be in common ground. We'll be doing some Qigong together for all ages. Our high school youth group meets in the library today, and there's also a town hall in the adult faith development room, room 107. All those classes start at 10:30, so take some time to get to know each other, and we'll see you in Common Ground, 107, or the library.
Find your own way of celebrate. Oh, yes. Thank you. Find your own way of celebrating the holidays, and you too at home can be always in beta if something doesn't work perfectly this time. If you didn't have the tree out last year and now when you pull it down from the attic you discover none of the lights work, shrug and say that's okay, because as Reverend Jamie Yandel said last week, joy can be resistance and we can be fierce and rebellious in our joy. May you go forward knowing that you are lovable and loved, that life is fragile and a gift, and you are not alone.
We invite you to stay after the service to enjoy fellowship time with one another and faith development activities of this day. We extinguish this flame, but we recommit anew to carrying into our week the flame of justice and love. May we share with others the courage and strength we find here. Our postlude is Deck the Halls, performed by Daria.